I'm Dan Dalator. In over 10 years of experience as a clinician and a coach, I've worked with hundreds of athletes to help them improve their health, wellness, and fitness, but still feel that there is so much more for all of us to learn. This is a podcast dedicated to furthering our understanding of health, wellness, fitness, and how to apply these concepts into our daily lives to create true and lasting changes in your fitness and health. This is the Exploring Fitness Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode. My guest today is our first ever returning guest, Sam Birds. Welcome back.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah,
What's new?
heck of a lot. I mean, kids, training, coaching, mentorship, like all the things that are, kind of in that priority order.
Yeah.
But yeah, just getting into the new year and seeing what's going and trying to get schedules set for the rest of the year.
Nice.
Yeah.
You just came off of a long weekend of
Mhm.
coaching. You want to talk about that at all? Or?
Yeah. So I am one of the lead coaches for the gymnastics course, which is formerly known as CrossFit Gymnastics. And we had a fantastic opportunity. We had a really big course. It was over 20 people in upstate New York. And we decided to use it as an opportunity to get the entire US team together for some professional development. The TGC staff is 24 members across the entire world. So, Europe, Japan, Africa, Australia. And then we have about 4 members in the US. We have some interns as well here. And so we had our director, Nathan Bird, fly from Paris, where he lives, along with another lead coach, Fraser Lyons from Glasgow, Scotland. And those two, myself, Dane Levy from Florida, Jess Estrada from Texas, Taylor Deering from Texas, and one of our interns, got together we flew in on Thursday. We did professional development all day Friday, which was a lot of how do we teach better when we're in the seminar? Because it's not just coaching, it's conveying information. There's a right way and a wrong way to do that from a pedagogy standpoint. And then Saturday and Sunday was the seminar. And it was really, really cool because normally on a seminar, there's a lead and there's an assist. And the assist is just the body in the room that does the movement. The lead is the one who does all of the talking and explaining. And we were able to swap in and out, and Nathan would take some sections and then I would take a section, and I'd pull someone in to be a demo, and then they would lead, and then they'd pull someone else in to be a demo. And so we got to see each other's style. We got to get feedback in a group environment. So from a professional standpoint, very, very growth mindset, very forward thinking in terms of how do we get better at this. But also like 2-3 long days. And I got back home 12:30 a.m. on Monday morning, and right back to dad life.
and right here to the podcast
And
Tuesday morning.
I know,
Perfect.
bright and squirrely.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's cool. Having a day of talking about like the theory and stuff behind teaching and coaching, and then having the 2 days to implement it.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a really special crew of people. It's a really special course in terms of the volume of information that we have the opportunity to convey, and some of the myths that we're able to dispel. I think of it a lot like the CrossFit Level 1. There was a time 20 years ago when everybody thought exercise looked like a certain thing, and then you went to CrossFit and you heard this concept of high intensity. We talked about measurable, observable, and repeatable. We talked about taking away the taking away the subjective and leaving the objective. And we get a chance to do the exact same thing applied to gymnastics. We talk a lot about physics. We talk about biomechanics and lines of force, planes of motion. And
wait, there's physics involved with human bodies and motion?
Who knew, right? We talked about some of the things that we very often see in terms of how the bar muscle up is a great example. The number of things that people are told to do or try in order to check that box and say, I did a bar muscle up, RX, check, right? And we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. We are ingraining poor movement habits in order to fit one thing that will be detrimental to other skills later. And so we teach you fundamental skills and then give you a unified language that is rooted in science and physics to talk about all of your gymnastics. And you can see how from 10 a.m. morning 1, the hollow and arc position that we start with on the floor relates all the way to at 12 p.m. day 2, the ring muscle up, and it's a steady straight line of progression and none of the laws are violated. Nothing I teach you about a ring muscle up is going to take away from what you learned in the hollow.
Cool. So I think some of what you just mentioned, like that rob Peter to pay Paul just in order to get a skill and be able to do it in a workout, is going to pop up a little bit in our main theme of discussion for today. But before we get there, I kind of want to backtrack a little bit to our previous discussion here on the podcast. We were talking about, I think the topic was general physical preparedness, and you proposed a workout.
I remember this
in that episode. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was 5 rounds for time, 400-meter run, and 10 deadlifts at 225.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And we both did it.
We did both do it. It was really bad.
We didn't both do it together.
No.
We actually, Sam was the first one to do it. He reported his time and feelings about it to me, and then I proceeded to do it myself.
Yep.
Yeah. Any comments on the workout?
I mean, you could make comparisons there's comparisons between our relative fitness levels, and what our training looks like day to day and how that might have affected performance. I think you actually ran outside for yours.
Correct.
Yeah, I was on an assault runner.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit different there. I think though that it was interesting to hear you report how you went about the deadlifts. The whole point of the discussion was if you've got a big heavy deadlift, that's great. But the first time you interval style jack your heart rate and then go do deadlifts, how does that where do the wheels fall off?
Right.
And so my approach was, okay, once you get to the bar, don't put the bar down. And that way I'm not losing time when I do 5 reps and then I drop the bar and I'm like, it's don't put the bar down. So I did 5 sets of unbroken deadlifts. Maybe I broke the last set 7 and 3 or something like that because I just smoked.
Yeah.
But that was my goal.
What did you then treat the run as your recovery, or just tried to maintain?
I tried to maintain at a bare minimum 2-minute per 400-meter pace, and maybe a little bit ahead of that. I know I've got a relatively long stride that I can get away with on an assault runner, and so I tried to take advantage of that. I was like, okay, I want a certain cycle rate for my legs. I want a certain stride length. I want to be able to take advantage of both the machine and my natural anthropometrics and maintain what I would call a slightly faster than recovery pace. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So my approach was, I know I don't have the best deadlift. So I did quick singles the whole way.
Right.
To where as soon as that bar hit the ground, I was following right behind it, picking it back up for all 10 and trying to more use that as my recovery.
I get that.
And pushing the pace on the run.
Yep.
Yeah. So what you were asking about before, I wrote a couple numbers on the board.
Oh.
Those are our times.
Okay. That makes more sense. Cool.
I literally looked back at our text thread before. So Sam came in at
14:22.
Yeah. And I was 12:27.
Yep.
So again, relative fitness levels, different approaches.
About a 2-minute gap.
About a 2-minute gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it's interesting if you were going for maximum intensity, the way you did it is the right way. The only way you're going to shave time in that workout is by running faster, which nobody wants to hear.
Right. Just like Helen.
Yes.
Once you get to the point where you can do all of the pull-ups and kettlebell swings basically unbroken,
yes,
it comes down to how fast you can run.
Oh, it's so
bad. So bad.
Yes.
But anyways, the topic for today, I asked you if you had anything kind of like burning at you that you wanted to discuss, and the topic that you came up with was around intensity. You've already talked about intensity a couple times just in sitting here.
Yeah.
What about intensity in CrossFit
Grinds my gears.
grinds your gears?
Yeah. The misunderstanding and misapplication of intensity in training.
Okay. Can you expand?
Yeah. So I don't think enough people understand it correctly. And when I say correctly, I'm saying everything relative to CrossFit and what we know about sports science. Right.
So the definition of CrossFit is?
CrossFit's definition is constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity. Okay. And you could insert a little word there in parentheses, the word relative. So relative high intensity,
right?
Because intensity is subjective to each human.
Correct.
But it doesn't change the fact that the intensity must be high in these functional movements that we vary daily in order for us to say what we're doing is CrossFit. Right. So we can say those words, and I can tell you, I can draw a power equation, force times distance over time, and I can tell you what your power output relative to how fast an effort is, and I can chart your horsepower. And we use that as a correlate. Power from a biomechanics standpoint is the same as intensity, right? And that's important, and that'll come back later. But very often we return to the subjective definition of intensity. How does it feel, right? And when we're coaches, you're leading a class, we'll talk about the intended stimulus for a workout, and it's hard for people to understand mechanically or perhaps from a technique standpoint what we might be talking about. So we resort to using analogs or metaphors, and we say it should feel like blah blah blah. Those are useful tools, and I would never tell anyone to not use them. But you also should never forget what the reason why we do that. And a great example is Helen. Let's take Helen. If you have that athlete, every gym has this athlete. Let's say this athlete's name is Tommy, right? Tommy comes in, and Tommy loves to go ham. He loves to go hard. And he wants to pick up that 53-pound kettlebell, and he wants to sling it. We won't even talk about the pull-ups. Talk about the kettlebell. As a coach who's seen Tommy in his regular training, he's good about it. He comes 3 to 5 days a week. I see him plenty enough, right? I know Tommy should not RX this because maybe he's got a little bit of rounding in his thoracic spine. He's not maintaining midline stability. And I know that's going to be a thing that is present, and I don't want that to be present, right? So I'm thinking to myself, okay, we got to scale him to 35 pounds, maybe 44 pounds, something like that. And that's going to allow him to, one, keep him safe and execute well, but also like get appropriate intensity. Nope. Tommy wants to do it RX, right? And you got a choice as a coach. Do I want to have this battle or not? Do I want to die on this hill or not? And I can tell you what happens. We've all seen this. You have that athlete. They shouldn't go with the heavier load. And what will happen is they will go throughout the workout. And because they've got a heavier load, and this is even more pronounced if you have that person who wants to do RX plus, like they'll take a 20-pound wall ball and be like, that's not enough. I'm going to do 30 pounds. And they will grab that load that is heavier than they should, do a set, usually a smaller set than they would normally do, and then rest. Lots of rest. And then come back and they'll do their work, and then they'll rest, and they'll go out and they'll do the other thing. They'll do the runs. They'll come back in.
I don't want to pick this back up.
I don't want to pick this back up. And I totally understand that I might tick some people off when I say this, but I don't care, right? Going back again, the point of CrossFit was to remove the subjective and to make things measurable, observable, and repeatable. If you psychologically, either consciously or unconsciously, decide to take that heavier load and use it as an excuse to take more rest and avoid intensity, which, regardless of its relative level, sucks. Intensity hurts.
You can make any workout hurt as bad as you want to.
Just go faster.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you take that extra load and use it as an excuse to hide yourself from intensity, one, you're not doing CrossFit, right? Not the way that we've taught it or been taught it. And then two, you are robbing yourself of fitness. And I don't think enough trainers or athletes understand that concept and implement it well. And for a lot of reasons.
Basically, it's a matter of leaving your ego at the door
Mm-hmm.
and picking something that's going to help you stay in the intended stimulus for that workout.
For the athlete, yes, but it's also a matter of the coach leaving their ego at the door. You know, it can be hard to have that athlete come to you and you say to this athlete, hey, Tommy, I want you to grab the 35-pound kettlebell, maybe the 44 if you're really feeling froggy, right? But let's scale that load back. And they say, no. They look you dead in the eye and they plant their foot in the sand. They say no. And the thing about ego is it works both ways. If I am puffing myself up, that's ego. If I am fearful of what people will think of me, that's still ego. It's self-centered, self-focused. And so if to protect my own, what I think is other people's perception of me, I choose to back down and not do what I know is right for this athlete, I'm doing that for egotistical reasons. And potentially, even worse, putting them in a position where their injury risk is much higher. And as strength and conditioning coaches, our first rule, our first order of business is
Safety.
Safety. And this is not an opinion. If you want to argue about this, you're not a trainer. You're not a coach. You're just a charlatan. If that's something you think is debatable.
Can't take safety out of it.
No.
Yeah.
Like, first rule is prevent injury. Second rule, after you prevent injury, is increase athletic performance.
Safety first, questions later.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, funny enough, this happened to me, and I was coaching this morning.
Did you do Helen?
We did not. But I gave an athlete some cues to work on their double unders.
Yep.
And after class, they came up to me and said, I was really questioning and not very excited about what you told me, but I appreciate it. And
okay.
So good feedback.
Yeah.
And that athlete listened.
Yeah.
How do you approach the athlete? Like you said, Tommy looks you dead in the eyes and says, no.
So it's not going to work if I tell Tommy he's wrong. It's not going to work if I tell Tommy why I'm right.
You have to let them come up with a conclusion on their own.
Kind of. So we talk about this on both the gymnastics course and the Bird Box coaching development course. They're sister courses. You may have high experience athletes and low experience athletes, high commitment athletes and low commitment athletes. Tommy is a high experience, low commitment. And what we mean by that is Tommy's probably been around a while. If this is the Tommy, like if you have a Tommy, he's that guy who's been around like 5 to 10 years, has not really changed his diet, he comes in, he goes ham, he probably adds burpees to a workout extra because he thinks it's going to make it harder. And he's low commitment because he doesn't buy into what the coaches say. He thinks he knows better. This is especially a problem if you are a trainer who became a trainer or came into the gym and then became a trainer after Tommy. And so now Tommy thinks he knows more than you. Never mind the fact that he has not spent the time to educate himself or to be educated. It's hard to put yourself in front of those people and then to attempt to be an authority figure. So our recommendation is you have to sell that athlete. So it's not about what I want, because if I want to sell you ice cream and you're like, I have a dairy intolerance, we're not going to make a sale. I have to ask you what you're interested in. So if you're Tommy, I'll be like, Tommy, what do you want to get out of this workout?
Dairy-free ice cream.
Dairy-free ice cream. Dairy-free ice cream. Tommy, typically, when I've asked this question of athletes previously, they're like, I want to make it hurt. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I can say, if you want to make it hurt, that means you want a lot of intensity, right? Yes. Awesome. And I will go to a whiteboard and I will say, Tommy, if you do a 44-pound or if you do a 53-pound kettlebell, your relative intensity level is going to be here because you are taking more rest in between. Now, you don't have to scale to 26, but if you step down just a little bit to 44, you will take less time in your rest breaks, less time in your transitions, and it might give you the opportunity to push that run just a little bit more than you want. I can do the math for you in front of you, or you can just trust me on this. Your relative intensity is going to be higher. I promise, promise, promise. If you tell me you want to make this thing hurt, this is the way to do it. And I have to understand why they're here, what they're interested in, and then I have to provide them objective reasons and understanding that support them getting to their desired outcome, and then say, this is my recommendation. You tell me you want to get there. This is the way to get there. And I can do the math for you. I really don't want to because I'm bad at math and I'll have to get a calculator. But trust me on this one, man. And then you leave it in their hands. It's like, okay, he's told me how to get there. I can believe him and therefore believe in math, or I choose not to. And now it's on him. He doesn't get to turn around and point to the coach and say, well, so-and-so screwed me up, right? He's got to own that. And that it might take a couple times of that, but I have taken athletes who are hardos. They've been around a long time. They might even be relatively fit, but there's not a lot of buy-in between me and them. And I've won them over one workout at a time, something like this. And it all comes from, why are you here? What is important to you? And make that connection with that athlete.
Do you think like a round
That can be useful.
has utility there?
Absolutely. That can be useful. You have to be careful. So let's take Helen as an example. In a prove it round, trainers, if you've not heard of this, the point of a prove it round is to take a miniaturized version of the workout, fewer repetitions, fewer sets, and give the athlete a taste of what they should be able to do. If you've not done that previously in your training, a prove it round could feel like overkill, and you might have some athletes be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! You know, I don't want to waste my energy." You know,
that should be a good indication that that you're attempting to do too much.
Yes, yeah, but it's too much relative to what they've done previously. It doesn't mean it's too much. It doesn't mean it's more than what they need. But you've got to. We're talking about human beings. You can't just like bait and switch them. You've got to make things very gradual. And so, if you've done that before, you say, Tommy, here's the deal. Just for the prove it round, do me a favor. I want you to do this, this, and this, right? And I tell everyone in the class, listen, for this prove it round, you should be able to finish under, and I give an aggressive time cap. Let's say it's 45 seconds. I know it's something that Tommy is going to be sucking wind after if he goes for that 53. But I tell them this should feel easy. If you finish it and it feels too hard, it's too hard for the workout. It's not going to get any easier, right? And I try to make it so that if he does what I say, he gets the desired outcome that I described. And so I lay in these breadcrumbs, these points of validation throughout the entire thing. You did it. Good job. You did it. Good job. You did it. Good job. But especially with male athletes, sports science tells us that male athletes like autocratic coaching, do this, do this, do this, and positive reinforcement. Well done. Good job. That kind of thing. So if I give this thing to Tommy and he does it and he gets the desired outcome, I cannot then ignore him. I've got to go back, give him that positive reinforcement and cement that like dopamine serotonin hit. And that if I can do that this time, next time, maybe a couple more times, Tommy's going to start to do it on his own. Because he's going to be listening to me. And he's going to be seeking that external validation because he sees, man, if I do what coach does, if I do what coach tells me to do, I'm going to get that external validation. At a subconscious level, that is what he sees.
We're all like Pavlov's dogs.
We are. Guys especially. Yeah. We joke about it on the course. Like, if you want to, you get a room full of only guys and we're training, especially weightlifting, it's, come here, sit, good boy. It's that good. And if if you want to get an example of what it looks like on the other side, that same sports science study tells us that females do not like autocratic coaching. They want to be brought into the decision-making process, so democratic coaching. They want to have a little independence, and they do not like positive reinforcement because it feels like a lot of attention on themselves. So oftentimes in a class, females will band together if they're doing squats, or recently we saw it with squats. So bunch of 2 squat racks and kind of females grouped together, relatively same loads and things like that. If I walk up to Mary and I say, Mary, you're smashing it, good job, Mary's probably going to feel like a spotlight has been turned on her. She might not care for that. But if I walk to the group and I say, hey, Karen, how's Mary doing? Karen's going to say, oh, Mary's smashing it. And then all of the other females come in with positive reinforcement, but it comes from social support rather than the authority figure. So females prefer democratic coaching with social support as opposed to males who like autocratic coaching and direct positive reinforcement. These are, of course, generalizations, but the literature is quite clear on it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So most of the intensity talk so far has kind of revolved around Metcon style training. Could we like shift gears a little bit?
Absolutely.
Because CrossFit isn't all metabolic conditioning.
100% not.
There is weightlifting involved, skill work, like that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So how does intensity fit into those?
Weightlifting is the most direct example. So intensity in weightlifting is directly correlated with load. Where we run into issues here is not typically trying to people go too heavy. Occasionally you'll get that athlete who they're outlifting themselves. But the risk of excessive intensity in weightlifting is very clear to the human body. It's injury. And so if you're squatting, you're going to get pinned under a barbell. If you're deadlifting, you might slip a disc. If you're bench pressing and you don't have a spotter, you might get a bar on your throat. So we can see the risks of excessive intensity much more clearly, which is why the outcome very often on weightlifting days is the opposite. People go lower than they should. You might be squatting less because we're afraid, we're very conscious of the dangers of that intensity. And so we don't actually get enough stimulus to drive an adaptation, which is, from an exercise physiology standpoint, what we're looking to do, right?
That's why we're here.
It's why we're here, right? So let's take a 5x5 back squat as an example. The literature tells us that loading for a 5x5 back squat must be at 78.5% or greater of an athlete's 1 repetition maximum in order to drive adaptations, at least optimal adaptations. Below that, you can drive adaptations, but to get the same level of adaptation, you would have to do more sets, as an example. So if I'm doing a 5x5, a 5x5 only becomes effective truly at 78.5% and higher, which means if you step to a bar and you do 30%, you're not driving anything. If you step to a bar and you do 50%, you are likely, from a percentage maximum standpoint, you're likely working in a hypertrophy rep range, in a hypertrophy loading range, but in an incorrect rep range for hypertrophic loading. So we have to convince those athletes, hey, I want you to, if your one rep max and recent within the last 6 months, that could be a good benchmark. If you don't have a recent 1 rep max, when you step to the bar and you begin your lift, you should not be able to hold a conversation with someone else. You'd have to be like, hang on, just 1 minute, because you've got to focus. You're going to do some work.
Or it should feel between a 7 and an 8 out of 10 on an intensity level.
I love that. RPE. Yeah. And I think that RPE gets a little bit fuzzy, of course, because it's rate of perceived exertion. And if you have that athlete who hasn't spent a lot of time under a barbell, they might not understand what true hard work looks like. In my experience is most people are stronger than they think. They can do more than they think they can. So as the coach in that session, if I have an athlete for whom that is my concern, I'm not looking at the weight on the bar. I'm looking at bar path and speed, right? If the athlete's speed going down and up is consistent, even though they're loading, they are not working hard. If the athlete's bar path starts to slow 2 reps into a 5-rep set, now I know we're working, right? If they make a jump and then the first rep is a grind, I'm sitting there holding my breath. And it's like, okay, they're going to squeak this out or they're going to dump the bar. And I've got to make sure I'm paying attention, right? And that athlete might need a little bit of a push. They might need a little bit of motivation, or they might need a cue that says, dump the bar, right? So that's my big thing when I look at weightlifting intensity.
Okay. So we have somebody that can do a set of 10 deadlifts at 225.
Yeah, can. It is possible.
Yes, it is possible for them to deadlift 225 for 10 reps.
Mm-hmm.
And then your proposed workout pops up the next week.
Yep.
The, what was it, 5 rounds, 400-meter runs?
5 rounds, 400-meter run, 10 deadlifts.
10 deadlifts at 225.
Yep.
That person can deadlift 225 10 times.
Yep.
Should they do that in the workout?
Here's a great way to think of this. Right? So the prescribed weight is 225. If I have you do 10 reps at 225, and that is your 10 repetition maximum, you will not be able to do 10 reps in subsequent rounds because your recovery just ain't that good. If you tell me you got a 10 rep max at 225, nope. What we likely need to see is a max deadlift north of 400 pounds for a 225 for 10 reps. And the way I'm getting there is if you take the total repetitions, right? The total repetitions are 50 reps. I would say, cool, what's your 40 or 50 rep max? And 225 gets spicy about 20 reps in, right? But you could squeak to 30, and I would really want you closer to like 40 to know for sure that you can maintain good position. You've got the requisite strength to be able to move that bar for however many reps, right? Probably 20 repetitions is the minimum. So if 20 repetitions at 400 pounds, or pardon me, if 20 repetitions at 225 unbroken is your benchmark, let's say it's 50% of your 1 rep max. That means you've got a 1 rep max in the 4 to 450 range, depending if it's 40 or 50%. So if you do the math back and I say, what's your 20 rep max? And you say, I don't know. If you could squeak 225 for 20 reps, it's safe to do for 10, for sure, without a doubt. But also I've got a 1 rep north of 400. If your 1 rep is in the 300 range, right? Then I'm going to say you should have a 20 rep max in the 150 range. And if you tell me your 150 is, that's more like a 5 rep max, we don't have it, right? And so we can give people these numbers as examples, as a way to find that same intended stimulus relative to what their ability is. Another example could be the workout Fran.
You literally had this discussion with me. It was probably like a month and a half ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was our programmed workout of the day.
Yes.
Here at the gym.
Yep.
And you came for our semi-regular Wednesday gymnastics sessions.
Yep.
And I said, hey, want to do Fran with me? You're like, nope, but I'll watch.
Yeah. Absolutely not.
Yeah. We had a pretty in-depth discussion about what I should do for the workout and how I should approach it based on what I wanted to get out of it.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So it's good that you remember that. So for those of you who might not know, 21, 15, and 9 thrusters at 95 pounds for guys, 65 pounds for the ladies, and pull-ups, kipping pull-ups. In order to achieve the intended stimulus, which, regardless of what anyone else says, is 5 minutes or less, Fran is a fast workout. We want intensity. I want you to go fast, right? If you're taking 7 minutes for Fran, you're not doing Fran. You're doing something else. It might include thrusters and pull-ups, but not Fran. If I want you to get to 5 minutes or under, that means that set of 21 needs to be unbroken. for both your pull-ups and your thrusters, right? So if I want you to do 21 unbroken thrusters at 95 pounds, well, you're going to need a 1 rep max thruster north of 200. And so the first question there is, have you ever done a 1 rep max thruster? And the second one is it north of 200 pounds? If the answer is no, you have good reason to scale below 95 pounds for the intended workout, right? So pull-ups are another great example. I want you to do 20 unbroken pull-ups, right? 21 unbroken pull-ups. If I tell you your load for the workout should be 50% of your 1 rep max, then your volume for the pull-ups should be 50% of your max repetitions unbroken, which means if I tell you I want you to do 21 unbroken pull-ups, you should have the capacity for 42 or more. And few people have that. And so the question is, if I would tell someone who didn't have a 1 rep max thruster north of 200 to scale weightlifting, why would I not tell that same person to scale their pull-up load or their pull-up volume? And most people don't have a great answer for that. Partly because we want to encourage intensity. It's a benchmark workout. People get psyched up about it. It's their reason to go hard. But we don't run CrossFit competition programs. We run a training program. If I want to seek the optimal adaptation for the intended stimulus of Fran, which is sub 5-minute sprint, squat press into dynamic pull, I want to make sure that I'm being conscious of what is my 1 rep max for my thruster, what's my max number of repetitions for a pull-up, and use that to be able to drive my optimal training adaptation.
So if that's not happening enough,
If that's not happening enough,
how do we make it happen?
Oh, God. Well, first of all, how do we know it's not happening enough? If your athletes are not PRing, like 10 years in, PRs slow down, but you should still be driving training stimulus, driving adaptation. The rate of adaptation slows, but you don't want it to cease or reverse. So you should still be setting PRs, right? Year over year, your Fran time should get faster. Maybe not by a whole minute, but it should get faster. And if we're training appropriately, and if you achieve the workout's intended stimulus, appropriate intensity, things like that. So if it's not happening, how do we get there? Sometimes it's a culture issue in a gym. Sometimes you simply do not have the support, the requisite support from the owner or head coach into the coaching staff to basically get the blessing to go to this athlete and say, listen, I need you to scale aggressively. You might have a grip and rip culture in your gym. That just is what it is, right?
I am not saying that this is happening at any of the gyms that I attend, by the way.
No,
this is all generalized.
Yeah, this is absolutely generalized. I have been to gyms that have a grip and rep culture. I will not throw anybody under the bus. I have been to gyms where the coaching culture is just one step above negligence. But if you recognize the opportunity for changes, the first question, like if you don't own that gym, the first question is, can I get sign off on changing how I do this? And let's say they say, you know what, I see your point. Go ahead and give it a shot. Now you've got to come back to a room full of people who have been conditioned, like Pavlov's dog, to do things a certain way. And they do them that way over and over again because they get the happy chemicals in their brain. So you've got to change things in the right way and slowly enough that they continue to get the happy chemicals, which means you can't just bait and switch. A great example is if you do strength and Metcon training in your programming, and then you're like, nope, we're going to switch to 1 workout a day. Bad idea. And having done this and made this mistake, I can reinforce the fact that it's a bad idea. That needs to be a change that happens probably over a year or more. And little bits and pieces you're pulling out or changing how people approach a strength session or focus on a Metcon until you're doing maximum intensity for 1 effort across the entire workout. And it should happen so slowly that nobody notices. That's kind of in the global. In the specific, let's say in an individual training session, I first want to understand what is the actual intended stimulus. Then I've got to find I'm going to coach let's call it the 6:30 class. I got a couple fire breathers in the 6:30 class, but I got a couple people who they're just there because it's the time that fits into their schedule. They want to get their good sweat on. Okay. If they want to get their good sweat on, I want to make sure that I have pre-selected either criteria or wholesale scaling options prepared for different demographics of people, right? If I have an advanced level athlete, we define an advanced level athlete in CrossFit as anybody who can every single day step into a workout and do the workout as intended, RX, with the intended stimulus, loading, and requisite skill, right? So it doesn't matter what shows up. If it's Amanda, if it's squat, snatches, and muscle ups, if it's a 5K run, if it's, CrossFit total, they are probably the fittest 5% of human beings in your gym. Below that, you have intermediate athletes who might be able to do loading, except on the higher end, maybe some benchmark workouts, or they have to scale skill level. They might have handstand push-ups, but not handstand walking, as an example. And then everybody else is an opposite level athlete, and you're scaling everything. So I can understand the stimulus, I can come prepared with built-in scaling options, and I can tell people why those things are the scaling option. And then as I step through the class plan, I can use sections of my teaching. If I'm doing pull-ups, I can say, hey, you should be able to do X, Y, or Z. If you cannot show me one strict pull-up with mastery, you do not get to do kipping pull-ups. I'm going to provide you something different. Maybe you can practice the beat swing, the kip, but you're not going to be flailing about underneath a bar at full body weight. If you are doing thrusters, you don't know your one repetition maximum. I will tell you, you have to do the first set of 21 unbroken. And as a prove it, I will make you do 21 unbroken thrusters. And for the person who has adequately conditioned for Fran, a bonus set of 21 thrusters with, before the bathroom break will not be deleterious to their output. And that's a big ass. You gotta really believe in what you say to walk into a room and be like, yeah, give me 21 thrusters and 21 pull-ups if you want to do Fran RX. A lot of people are going to throw you a bird.
I almost did whenever you told me to do
it. And now, again, we have an ecosystem. We have a culture that has conditioned people to smash their face against a wall in terms of effort. And we reward the day-to-day without having any understanding of what the long-term implications are or could be, and how the day-to-day needs to change to serve those. And I think that comes from a misunderstanding of CrossFit's original intention, which was to increase your fitness, defined as work capacity across broad time and modal domains throughout your years. That's how CrossFit defines health. If you read Greg's 100 Words of Fitness, it of course begins with nutrition. It talks about weightlifting. His words are the fundamentals of gymnastics, which include flips, spins, pirouettes, things like that. And then at the very end, the most misunderstood line is regularly learn and play new sports. The intention of CrossFit was never to make you better at CrossFit. It was only ever to provide you a mechanism for increasing your capability in life so that you could do anything. And if we as affiliate owners or trainers lose sight of that, and if we sacrifice the long-term vision for short-term external validation through our members and our wallets, we run the risk of, one, causing harm, and two, affecting our long-term intention. I want to be a professional. I want to make enough money that supports my family. I want to continue to be able to do this, and I want to have to not leave this and go get a quote-unquote real job. Okay, if I sacrifice the long-term vision of people's health for short-term gratification, knowing that if they try to keep this up for 5 years, they're either going to burn out or get injured, that's going to affect my bottom line later, right? I don't want to ever lose a client. I don't want any gym ever. The only reason someone should leave your gym is if they move. If you have people who have to, hey, I got a labral tear, I got to drop out for 6 months. That should not be happening. That is a sign. If you have people who are getting injured and they have to leave your gym for 3 to 6 months or whatever it is, that is a sign that something is going wrong in your training.
Love that.
I may or may not have strong feelings about this.
This is why you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So dialing in intensity.
Yep.
To improve outcomes over the long term.
Yes.
Simple as that.
It's simple, not easy. Yes. Simple, not easy.
Simple, not easy.
Yeah.
Just like many of the workouts that we run into.
Just like Fran.
Looks simple.
Ugh.
It's not easy.
Woof. And by the way, I remember you crushed that. You crushed
Thanks.
that workout. Yeah, you did
Appreciate
a great job.
2-second PR.
Yeah. High five. There we go.
Even with going unbroken completely on the thrusters.
Yeah. Which you did not want to do.
Didn't want to. That wasn't my game plan whenever I originally saw the workout.
Yep.
But after talking with Sam, I did go unbroken on all the thrusters.
Yep.
Didn't quite make it there on the pull-ups.
That's okay.
But yeah.
Yeah. And like there are things there to address. So like if you can go unbroken on the thruster, you probably have a 1 rep max thruster north of 200, maybe close to 225. If you could go unbroken, if you have the capability, but you lack the grip strength or you get out of position, as a trainer, those are things that those tell me what you need to focus on. You need to work on grip strength. It sounds like you're doing farmer carries and dead hangs. Oh, I get out of position. Well, what we got to do then is we got to go back and work fundamental positions, improve your capacity in those fundamental positions iteratively, incrementally. And then next time Fran comes around, you'll be doing beautiful butterfly unbroken pull-ups for 21 reps, hopping down, going right back to the barbell.
I hope so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Let's go do that.
Let's go do that.
Let's go do that.
Actually, I think that is what we're going to go do during our gymnastics.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right
We're
now.
going to work on fundamental positions.
Perfect.
Cool.
Well, thanks for having the chat.
Hey, man, anytime. I love this.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Thanks everyone for listening.
Cheers, everyone.